Hey y'all, thanks for hanging out with me. I got some sweet tea in the icebox. Put your feet up, hang out with an old lady for a minute. If you want to crochet along with me, it's called the Birdie Finger Stitch, and you can find that on my crochet playlist. And we're going to talk a little bit about that rude gesture, the history of the birdie finger. Here we go.
Welcome to the deep dive. Grab your snorkel because we are plunging headfirst into the source material you shared with us today. Yeah, we've got quite a stack here. We really do. Everything from like ancient texts, academic papers, news reports, even some psychology research. And it's all focused on this one single gesture, something you see, well, probably everywhere. Exactly. It's instantly recognizable, right? Often pretty controversial. We see it in history, politics, sports, pop culture. It's kind of amazing. It really is. And, you know, some symbols just have these incredibly long, winding lives. They change meaning, pop up unexpectedly. And this one's a prime example. So today we're taking a deep dive into the unexpected history of, yes, the middle finger. We're tracing its path, looking at the cultural impact, even a little bit of the science behind it. Absolutely. We want to give you a well-rounded, maybe surprising, maybe even slightly funny look at something that seems so simple on the surface. Our mission, a new perspective on flipping the bird. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even start? How far back does this thing go? Way back. The sources, they actually trace it to ancient Greece. We're talking maybe 4th, 5th century BC. Whoa, okay, that's older than I thought, like before the Roman Empire really got going. Exactly. We've got Aristophanes, you know, the famous playwright. Yeah. He apparently used it in his comedy, The Clouds. That was like 419 BC. A character gives it to Socrates, believe it or not. No way, giving Socrates the finger. In a play. Seems so. And it wasn't just fiction. There's the story about Diogenes, the Cynic philosopher. The guy who lived in a barrel. That's the one. The sources say he used the gesture to show what he thought of the orator Demosthenes. Called him a demagogue while doing it, apparently. That's brilliant. So even back then, philosophers were expressing themselves pretty directly towards politicians. Some things never change, Seems that way. Yeah. And from Greece, you know, the gesture makes its way to ancient Rome. Hoket. And there, it gets a specific name. The digitus imputicus, the impudent finger. Sounds about right. What did it signify in Rome? Was it just general rudeness? Oh, it was way more specific. And pretty graphic. The sources are clear. It represented a phallus. Oh, what now? A phallus. Like the middle finger itself was the penis, and the curled fingers on either side were the testicles. Yikes. Okay, so not subtle. Not at all. Using it was meant to degrade, intimidate, threaten. Yeah. It's a very potent sexual insult. A visual attack, really. Yeah, and that really changes how you think about it. And the sources mention some pretty wild anecdotes. Oh, yeah. Emperor Caligula. You know, known for being a bit out there. Understatement of the year, maybe. Well, apparently he'd make people kiss his middle finger instead of his hand. Ow! Wow, it's a form of humiliation. Yeah, your degradation. That's wow. And the sources note that one guy, Cassius, who was forced to do this, he was later involved in assassinating Caligula. Wait, are they saying that's why? Not directly. They're careful not to say it was the only reason. But you kind of have to wonder if it, you know, added a little fuel to the fire. Like, okay, tyranny is bad, but this finger thing, now it's personal. Seriously, that's one heck of a footnote in history. Possible contributing factor. Imperial finger kissing demands. What else? There's another one about Emperor Augustus Caesar. He supposedly banished an actor from Rome entirely, just for using the gesture. Apparently so. The actor flipped off a heckler in the audience. Shows it wasn't just seen as like minor bad manners. It carried real weight. Definitely. So a major insult in the ancient world. Got it. But, and this is where it gets really interesting. That wasn't its only function. Oh, in the 1st century Mediterranean world, sources say the same gesture was also used for something else entirely. It had apotropaic power. Apo what now? Apotropaic, meaning it was believed to ward off evil. Yeah, like protection against the evil eye or other bad luck. Wait, the same finger, the offensive phallic symbol, was also a protective charm. Exactly. Yeah, isn't that fascinating? It could be this incredibly vulgar insult and a way to keep harm away. It really shows how context is everything, even thousands of years ago. Its meaning was flexible. Find. Blown. Okay, so ancient origins. Rude, phallic, potentially protective. What happens next? Does it just stick around? Well, that's where the trail gets a bit cold, according to the sources. There's this period, roughly the Middle Ages, where it seems to vanish. Or at least it's much less documented. Like it went into hiding. Could be. Some sources speculate that, maybe the prevailing attitudes, perhaps the influence of the Catholic Church being more prudish about overt stuff like that, pushed it underground, sent the bird packing for a few centuries, possibly. Or maybe other gestures took over for a while. Sources mention things like the fig, thumb between the first two fingers. That also had insulting kind of sexual connotations. Symbols come and go, I guess. Right. And speaking of the Middle Ages and gestures, this feels like the time to talk about that archer story, the one everyone shares online. Ah, yes. The English longbowmen at Agincourt, right? It's the one. The French were going to cut off their drawing fingers, so the English defiantly waved those fingers back at them. Maybe yelled, "Pluck you," because of the buzz. It's a fantastic story. Defiant history, a pun. It ticks all the boxes. That, I sense a but come in. But yeah, the sources that really dig into this, they pretty much say it's, well, a myth. A fun one, but a myth. No way. Really? Yeah, historians looking at the actual records from the 100 Years' War find basically no evidence the French routinely did that finger chopping. Oh, doesn't seem very practical either. Wouldn't you want to ransom a skilled archer, not just maim them? Good point. Plus, think about how they actually drew the bows. Right. It wasn't just holding up one finger, was it? Not for a powerful English longbow. The sources talk about different techniques, like the thumb draw, or more commonly in Europe, the Mediterranean draw, which used usually 3 fingers, index above the arrow, middle and ring below, pulling the string. Sometimes the arrow sat between the index and middle finger. You needed a strong grip, multiple fingers working together, not just dramatically flipping the bird. So the physics don't even really support the gesture part of the story, pretty much. It's a cool image, but it probably tells us more about, modern folklore than actual medieval archery tactics. The real history is complex, maybe less meme-wordy. Okay, so myth busted. Ancient history is real, medieval story is fake. The gesture kind of disappears. When does it come back? It seems to start re-emerging, getting documented again as a sign of disrespect in the 1800s. It slowly creeps back into public view, and then eventually just explodes into modern life. Pretty much, even early movies kicked it up. Alfred Hitchcock's silent film, The Ring, from 1927. Yeah, apparently there's a scene where a character gives the finger due to a misunderstanding at a wedding. Even without sound, people knew what it meant. The visual is just that strong. And from there, it's everywhere. The sources list so many examples. Sports, for instance. Oh, definitely. There's a photo of Old Hoss Radbourne, a baseball pitcher. Old Hoss, great name. Right, from 1886, giving the finger in a team picture. That's almost 140 years ago, and it hasn't stopped. Montoya in NASCAR, Johnny Manziel in football, Bud Adams, the NFL owner who got fined $250,000, $250,000 for flipping off the other team's sideline. Yep, Jaromir Jagr in hockey is like this go-to expression of frustration or defiance in sports. The leagues hate it, fine people for it, but it keeps happening. And politics is no different, right? Absolutely not. Sources mention George W. Bush calling it a one-fingered victory salute back in '94, aimed at maybe reporters, maybe his opponent. Depends who you ask. And then there's Pierre Trudeau, former Canadian PM. The train car incident, exactly, giving the finger to protesters. Apparently that specific train car, is now in a museum. It becomes part of the political lore. That's amazing. We also see it with figures like Anthony Weiner, a German politician, Peer Steinbrück, and the artist Ai Weiwei, right? His photo series, Study of Perspective, using the finger against major landmarks, symbols of authority, Tiananmen Square. Yeah, very powerful protest imagery. And even more recently, the sources mention it being used on a Ukrainian postage stamp targeting a Russian warship, a potent symbol of national defiance in that context. Yeah, again, we're just reporting what the sources document here, not taking sides, but it shows the gesture's power in really serious situations, for sure. And then there's just pop culture, celebrities. Oh yeah, Britney Spears, MIA at the Super Bowl. That caused a huge fuss. It did. Adele, Ariana Grande. It's on red carpets, in music videos. It's even an emoji now. And that giant statue in Milan, in front of the stock exchange, right, Maurizio Catalan's sculpture. A massive marble hand, all fingers chopped off except the middle one, pointing right at the financial district. Talk about a statement piece. All these examples really show how far it's come from just being that ancient phallic thing. The sources emphasize its versatility now. It can be protest, defiance, rage, frustration. Yeah, even like excitement sometimes. It's really become this multi-tool of nonverbal communication. A controversial one, but still, exactly. And because it's so widespread and, loaded, it inevitably bumps up against the law sometimes. Yeah, you can actually get in trouble for this, right? Sources mention legal stuff, this definitely. Depending on where and how you do it, it could lead to charges, disorderly conduct, maybe contempt of court. There was that judge example in California. Oh yeah, the municipal judge who got removed from office, partly because he flipped off a defendant who was late for traffic court. You cannot make this stuff up. Getting the bird from the judge. The ruling said censure might have been enough if that was the only issue, but it's part of the bigger pattern. Still, pretty wild. What about free speech, though? In the US, isn't it sometimes protected? That's the tricky part the sources discuss. Often, yes, it's considered expressive conduct under the First Amendment, even if it's offensive. Courts have upheld that. But not always. Not always. If it genuinely disrupts proceedings, like in a courtroom, you could still be held in contempt. Context matters hugely. And that gets super complicated with broadcasting, right? Like on TV. You always see it blurred out. That's the FCC factor. Indecency rules. Broadcasters get really nervous, use time delays for live shows. They don't want fines. Even though the definition of indecency seems kind of vague. Very much so. The sources talk about how the FCC stance has shifted. Remember the Bono F-word incident at an award show? Vaguely, yeah. Initially, the FCC said a fleeting use was okay. Then they changed their mind, saying basically any use of certain words could be indecent because it might inherently have a sexual connotation. So broadcasters are just left guessing. Kind of feels that way. They've called the indecency standard a dynamic target. It leads to a lot of self-censorship, blurring the finger, cutting away just to be safe. It's this constant tension. Okay, so legally it's complicated. What about science? Has anyone actually studied what this gesture makes people think? Especially given that whole phallic origin story. Funny you should ask. Yeah. Yes, the sources mentioned a psychology study that looked into exactly that. Do gestures keep their original mental links? So the big question, does seeing the middle finger actually make people think penises subconsciously because of its history? That was the idea they tested. They showed people pictures of gestures, then quickly had them complete word fragments like PEN. The theory is if you just saw something related, you're primed to complete the word that way. Okay, makes sense. Like seeing a cat picture makes you faster at thinking cat. Exactly. They did control tests like showing a P sign before PEA, and people did complete it as peace more often. Then they showed either an AOK sign or the middle finger before PEN. And did the middle finger prime penis? Surprisingly, no. The study found seeing the middle finger did not significantly increase penis completions compared to seeing the AOK sign. Get out. So for modern English speakers, that original connection isn't really there mentally. That's what this particular study suggests, yeah. But they did another test to make sure their method worked. They used a different gesture, one they called the finger bang. The finger bang, oh boy, what does that look like? Sources describe it as putting the index finger of one hand into a circle made by the thumb and index finger of the other hand. Ah, right, gotcha. Yes, science. That one seems a little more on the nose, iconically speaking. And guess what? When people saw that gesture before, PEN, they completed it as penis more often, significantly more often, yes. Huh. Okay, so the finger bang works, but the classic middle finger doesn't trigger the old meaning as much. Exactly. The interpretation from the source is that even if it started phallic, that specific link has weakened considerably for modern speakers. Its power now comes more from the general idea of disrespect, defiance, anger, not the original visual. That really makes you think about how symbols change over time, doesn't it? The cultural meaning kind of takes over. It really does. The way shifts. So, wrapping this up, what a journey. From ancient Greek insults and rumen, phallic terms, and protective words. Right, and protective words. Through a medieval quiet period, busting a popular myth, then exploding into modern sports, politics, art, facing down judges and the FCC, and finally even getting put under the microscope by psychologists. It shows just how fluid meaning is, how much context matters. It's still considered offensive by many, obviously, but it's undeniably powerful and deeply baked into how we communicate, non-verbally at least. Its meaning can still vary wildly, right? You mentioned Japanese Sign Language. Yeah, sources note that in JSL, that same handshake can just mean elder brother. No insult intended. From impudent finger to big brother. Wow, that covers a lot of ground for one digit. It's carried a heavy, shifting load through history, that's for sure. Well, thank you for walking us through all that. This deep dive was seriously fascinating. Glad to do it. And maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Consider how this simple arrangement of fingers can hold such a complex, debated, and frankly kind of wild history. What does this journey tell us about symbols, communication, and what we collectively decide is offensive across time and cultures? The next time you see it, or maybe even use it, perhaps you'll think about its surprisingly long and strange trip.